Welcome back to TWTL Ministries. This is Chris Ferris with a recap of Because of the Times, Night 2. It was an awesome service, amazing move of God. First, let me just say before I get into the ministers, there was an amazing praise break, anointed Holy Ghost move between the ministries of Mike Williams and Elias Limones, where it just kept coming in waves and waves. And how it was different. You had people falling out in the aisles in one moment, and then people jumping and shouting in another moment, and people just waving their hands in another, and it just kept coming in different kinds of ways of praise. And it was just really amazing. And it's one of those things where when you're in a room with 2,500 plus people just energized by the presence of God, it is just a powerful thing to be a part of and to witness. And it was just so rewarding. I was so excited to be a part of that. But that was like the bridge between two really amazing and important messages. And first off was Mike Williams, and he came with a message about the thing. The title of his message, "The Thing Is Still True," and his focus was on the promise of heaven. And without going into too much detail, he basically said we've got to still believe that heaven is real, and that that's a place that we're going, and that God is preparing it for us. And we cannot get sidetracked by the fact that it hasn't happened yet. You know, it's been 2,000 years almost since Christ ascended into heaven, and we haven't been called back. And it's easy to get caught up in this life because it hasn't happened. We've spent our entire lives waiting on the rapture to take place, and we've spent our entire lives waiting on heaven to come. And he described the New Jerusalem and its beauty and everything, and how that is a promise that God has given us, and we can't lose sight of that promise. It was really a refreshing message. You don't hear it spoken often. It didn't. I thought that he was going to go into how Link was tied, break down certain elements of unity and everything, but this was kind of out of left field, but in a great way, because it got everybody unified on the purpose of seeking heaven, and that's what led to that great outbreak of praise and worship. And he tied it in by talking about the promise that Abraham was given, that he was going to have sons and heirs and he was going to give birth to an entire nation. And he only ever saw one son, and it took forever for him to get that one son, Isaac. And it could have been easy for him to just throw up his hands and quit at any given moment. But he trusted God, and even when he got that son, how God asked him to come and sacrifice Isaac, he didn't question it. He did it because he trusted God and his promise that he was going to give him a nation. And he used several other examples, but that was the one that really stuck out to me. And it's one that you can hear so many other denominations and other Christians even say that, this is the best it's going to get. This is heaven. We're living in heaven on earth in this day and time, and we cannot lose sight that there is an actual heaven that we're going to. There is a promise that God has given us, and if that promise is true, then guess what? All of the promises that God's given us for this life are true. If God promised us a ministry, He's going to provide it. If God promised us blessings, He's going to provide it. We just have to trust God and follow God and claim the thing to be true, and seek the Lord until that thing becomes reality. Just because it isn't real right now doesn't mean that it's not true. And if we still seek the truth, and we seek it with fervency, if we seek it with prayer, and we seek it with commitment, and with our actions focused on God, then the thing that is true will become the thing that is reality. So it was really refreshing. And then Elias Limones, he's the speaker that I'm most excited to see at Because of the Times, and he did not disappoint. He talked about how he tied into what Brother Bernard was saying about we've got to build a house for the Lord, but in order to build a house for the Lord, you got to start with the altar. You can't start with the fancy lighting, and you can't start with a great music team. Those things are important. You can't start with creative teams and practical ideas and all that stuff. Those things are important. Don't get me wrong. You got to have infrastructure in your church. You got to have infrastructure in your life and your family. But if you don't start with an altar, well, it's all going to fall apart anyways. The altar has to be the centerpiece of your life here. And it has to be the centerpiece of your church, because that's what draws people to God, having an altar. And he used the scriptures from Ezekiel where God told Ezekiel exactly how to build the altar for the temple. And he broke down, and this is what's funny, is he actually went kind of Mike Williams on this. He talked about the cubit and how the cubit is 6 hand lengths and how that represents everything that man can do, because our number is 6. And the altar that Ezekiel was told to measure was a cubit and another handbreadth. So a cubit is 6 handbreadths and an extra, and then God told him, put an extra one in there, that 7th handbreadth, which meant that was to represent that's God's hand in everything. And we've got to have God's hand in everything that we do. It's got to be God first. We have to build the altar in our lives if we're going to be successful, but that altar also has to have God in it. It can't be an altar to man. It can't be an altar to what we're accomplishing, and it can't be an altar, for example, of our church. It can't be the altar of POA. It has to be the altar of Jesus Christ, and He has to be a part of that. And if we'll let God be a part of it, then we'll be more successful than we could ever be on our own, because we have finite means, but God is an infinite God. And what I got out of that too is that God commanded that it be that extra handbreadth. And that means that God's commanding to be a part of it. God desires to be a part of what we're building in our lives. He desires to be a part of our ministry. He desires to be a part of our families. He desires to be a part of our calling and our witness. He desires to be a part of everything in our lives. We just have to include Him. We got to go that extra step to include God and to let God be that extra hand involved, because all of what we're doing is it can accomplish a lot of things, but it's only going to be so much. And if we build a church that doesn't have the extra hand of God leading and guiding it and directing it, then it's just going to be a really nice nonprofit. If we're a minister that's doing everything by the way we think things should be done, then it's going to be, instead of ministers, we're going to be CEOs. Instead of witnesses, we're just going to be salesmen. Instead of family men and women who lead their home in prayer and worship, we're just going to be a caretaker for our children and a partner to our wife. But God has called us to greater callings than that. It was just so powerful, so refreshing. Both services, I'm not able to do them even enough service by trying to explain these things as briefly as I am. But in each case, there was just a mighty move of God, because like I said, after Mike Williams got done preaching, there was a 30-minute praise and worship to God without any music, without anything. It was just people going after God. And then when the music did start to come in, people went after God in unique and different ways, but it was all in concert together, which kind of tied into Ken Gurley's message about being a symphony. We actually saw that symphony of worship exampled after Brother Mike Williams' message on heaven. And that tells me if we'll get our minds on heaven, if we'll get our minds on the eternal, then outbreaks of worship and praise that we never thought possible will start to happen in our lives. And then when Brother Limones was done, there was a move of sincere prayer and fervency that led us to the altar of heaven. like what Sister Vesta was talking about, going at it deeply for God. So there was just so much depth in both the sermons and in the reactions and the actions of those people coming to hear those sermons. It was just a wonderful move of God from start to finish. I was just so excited to be a part of that. And I just one other thing that Brother Limones said is that he talked about how I think it was at BOTT 1990, how he had tried to do so many things his own self, but in a message given by pastor, he was convicted to come down to the front and just give it all to God. And that's when things changed for him. And you might be listening to this and saying, I've tried to figure everything out on my own. I've tried to do it. I've tried to fix my life. I've tried to fix my marriage. I've tried to fix my finances. I've tried to fix everything that I've been going through. But if you'll give God that hand in fixing your life, in doing for your life, you're going to be blessed beyond measure as a result of it. And you're going to see the fruit that you've been seeking on your own, because it's going to be the hand of God that delivers it to you. And it's also going to be stuff that you never thought possible. You never thought that you were going to receive this blessing this way, because you let God get involved. Because His hand knows what our mind could never know. His hand can do what our hands could never do. So we just need to trust God and let Him get involved. It was just, like I said, it was an awesome sermon. I was so excited to be a part of it. I was so excited to be a part of the whole night. And I'm looking forward to tonight's final night at BOTT. I'm not going to be able to be a part of the day session completely. I'm going to try and get up there. I've got some other things that have come up that I might not be able to be there for the entirety of BOTT today. If I am able to, I'm going to get you as many updates as possible. I'm also going to try and go around and talk to some ministers and hear what their thoughts about their experience because of the times this year. But if nothing else, look forward to a preview and of night 3 later on in the day. And like I said, as much as I can, I'll try and get some day session stuff up there and maybe some other written content as well. But until then, I'm Chris Ferris. This is TWTL Ministries. This is our coverage of Because of the Times 2018. I can't wait to see you tonight. God bless. Keep searching.